In this video, we are going to be discussing the great sage Rava. As we mentioned in the video about Rava and Rabba are two different people. Rava is pronounced with a vase, and Rabba is pronounced with a bays, and Rabba has a hey at the end, and Rava has an aleph at the end. They're two different sages, though they overlap a little bit. Rava's father name was Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. He was born in the city of Mechuza, and that is basically where he lived his entire life. His teachers were Rav Nachman and Rav Chizda. We discussed Rav Chizda in a previous video. Once, when Rav Chizda was sitting with his student Rava, as well as Rava's colleague Romi Bar Chama, and they were sitting together, and Rav Chizda's little toddler daughter, walks in and sits in her father's lap. And Rav Chizda playfully says to his daughter, "Which one do you want? Which rabbi do you want to marry?" And she said, "Both of them." And Rava said, "I will be the second one." And indeed, that's what happened. She married Rami Bar Chama, and later, after Rami Bar Chama's passing, she married Rava. So, in this kind of interesting little anecdote, ended up playing out. His father, his teacher was also one of his teachers was also Rav Yosef, as we mentioned in the previous videos, talking about Rav Yosef. And Rav Yosef blessed him that he should lead his city of Mechuza, which ended up becoming true as well. Later, he ended up even sending his son to study by Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef would ask Rav's son to tell him the customs of his father Rava. So Rav Yosef wanted to know his former students. He wanted to know what he does. That was how much Rav Yosef held of Rava. After Rav Yosef passed away, we discussed this in the previous videos discussing Abaye and Rava. After Rav Yosef passed away, there was a debate who should be the next Rosh Yeshiva of Pumbedisa, and the Abaye they did a contest of who would be whoever could say a teaching that would not be overturned, and Abaye won the contest over Rava and other colleagues. And after Abaye's passing, the Rava was appointed as the Rosh Yeshiva. However, Rava, instead of becoming the Rosh Yeshiva in the city of Pumbedisa, he moved the whole yeshiva to his town of Mechuza. And now Mechuza became the center of Torah. At that time, it was the only yeshiva in Babylon, and this Mechuza became the place of Torah, and really built up the stature of Mechuza. And later, this was something that the people really loved him because he had made the Mechuza a Torah center. Later, after he became the Rosh Yeshiva, we'll talk about what happened later, what happened to the Yeshiva of Mechuza. It did not last, but during Rava's time, it was the center. He was also a very pious person, and it says that he would fast on two days of Yom Kippur, meaning he would fast Yom Kippur, and he would fast the following day as well for 48 hours, because just like other holidays and outside the land of Israel, we keep 2 days because we're not sure about the which day was Rosh Hashanah, because they're waiting for the messengers to come from land of Israel, where they were deciding the moon. They would see the new moon, they would declare the new month. So because that they do not receive the messages, the law is that we keep 2 days outside of Israel, and that tradition continued even after we now have a set calendar. We no longer base every month on that month's new moon and declare it in the Beis Din in the Sanhedrin. That is no longer the case. However, that tradition of keeping 2 days continued, and again, it's not clear at that time whether they could be that they still were declaring the months. I'll leave that for another topic. But either way, so Rava would keep 2 days Yom Kippur because of his piety, which obviously is a very risky move, and that's not the law, but that was something that he did. He also encouraged agricultural activity for his students, because he felt that they would work for 2 months, the month of Nisan and the month of Tishrei, and that would give them parnasa, that would give them a livelihood for the whole year, and the rest of the year they could study Torah. Versus if they had other jobs, they would have to be working every day, and it would not allow them to study Torah. So he would say, I don't want to see anybody here in Tishrei and Nisan. That's when you should be in the field, and then the rest of the time you could be studying Torah. He was also very wealthy, and he was also very close to some of the rulers of that time, and the mother of the Shavar Malka, I believe it was her, the name of the king, and his mother would send gifts to Rava, and as appreciation for and recognition of his stature. He also would teach Agada. He would teach the expound on the verses of the Torah. So there's two ways of studying, two general topics that are in the Talmud. There's the halacha and the agada. The halacha is expounding on the verses in order to a understand what is the law. The second way is expounding on the verses in order to teach ethics. Essentially, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the essence of it. And he would teach in public. He would teach these ethics in order to inspire the community. Again, as we mentioned, his community really loved him, and that was one of the things that he would do. After his passing, the yeshiva actually split. Rav Nachman took the yeshiva, brought it back to Pumbedisa, and his other student, Rav Papa, became the Rosh Yeshiva, took that part of the yeshiva and brought it to the city of Naresh. I guess that's where he was from, and that is how the yeshiva ended up splitting into two, the yeshiva of Babylon. Okay, let's talk some sayings from Rava. By the way, as we mentioned, I forgot to mention in this video, we discussed in the previous video about Abaye, but again, most of the Talmud tells us how most of the uh, majority of the Talmud is the debates of Rava and Abaye, and actually, Rava had a very sharp way of teaching, very analytical way of teaching, and he would say that better it's better a logical answer than an answer of tradition. In other words, better to give me the logic rather than tell me so and so rabbi said that's the law. That was his whole way, and in fact, his students like Rav Ada bar Ava, for example, would say, "Don't go chew bones by Abaye. Come eat juicy meat by Rava." So that was his way of saying. It's all about over here. It's all about logic and delving, and that was the style of Rava. And in fact, many of Rava's students, when they had very little respect intellectually for other rabbis, and they couldn't study by other rabbis because they felt that Rava was the only place to be. As we mentioned, Mechuza became the capital, and especially after Abaye was no longer the Rosh Yeshiva in Pumbedisa, after his passing, everybody came to Rava. Okay, so let's do some teachings of Rava. One is famous one, Oy chavrusa, oy misusa. Either give me friendship or give me death. Kind of a precursor to the American version of that. So give me friendship or give me death. Next one was how great is a good woman and how terrible is a bad woman. Okay, another one is someone who embarrasses someone in public loses their share in the world to come. And another famous one, which was publicized greatly by the Hasidic movement, is God wants the heart. So here are some of his sayings that were related to Torah study. Again, Rava's whole thing was all about Torah study. That was the main focus of his yeshiva and his teachings. He said that Torah protects a person and saves them from all punishment. Torah is the spice, is like the medicine against the Yetzer Hara. Another teaching is that if a person is suffering, they should check their actions, meaning they should do an inspection, a self-inspection on their deeds, and if they can't find any deed that they've done wrong, they should assume that they had done the misdeed of nullifying the study of Torah, meaning they had wasted time that they could have been studying Torah, and that is the misdeed that is causing their misfortune. He would say that a fool stands up for a Torah scroll, but doesn't stand up for a Torah scholar. Some of his great students were Rav Zvid, Rav Papa, Rav Huna Berei Rav Yeshua, and Rav Ada bar Abba we mentioned. Ravina also quotes Rava many times. So many of the great sages of the Talmud were all students of Rava. This is like the meat and potatoes of the Talmud, Rava and Abaye, going back and forth. As we mentioned, all the law almost always follows Rava, except for 6 places where it follows Abaye. So this is Rava, one of the most important um, rabbis of the Talmud. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, please put in the comments section. We appreciate the feedback, and God willing, we'll see you in the next video.